we got to be honest about Arch Manning. He is a 2-star player with a 5-star name. If you were to swap Arch Manning's last name with Arch Vic or Arch Johnson, then you wouldn't have the same expectations for him as what you do with him having that Manning last name on the back of his jersey. And he was only hyped up as much as what he was during this offseason because of the family heritage of quarterbacks from Archie, the Eli, the Peyton, and he definitely has to be the worst quarterback of the Manning family, at least based off what we've seen right now. Paul Feinbaum before this season, I know that Paul Feinbaum always has a bunch of really bad takes, but when he called Arch Manning the best player that we've seen in every aspect since Tim Tebow, that statement kind of perfectly encapsulated what the Arch Manning preseason hype was in a nutshell. It was just completely unrealistic expectations that Arch Manning was never going to live up to. Even if Arch Manning was as good as advertised, I don't think he would have been the second coming of Tim Tebow. That's a lot of praise to give somebody that played against jabronis and nobodies in 2024. And for everybody that felt like Quinn Ewers was holding Texas back, you know what they say, the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and you never know what you lost until it's gone. And now Texas fans realize what they lost in Quinn Ewers. Yeah, Quinn Ewers frustrated you with the occasional bad pocket presence, the really bad overthrows that he would have, but Quinn Ewers, for the most part, gave you stable, consistent quarterback play. He could keep you in a game and possibly bring you back from being down multiple possessions as long as you had a good offensive line and some good weapons around them. Well, this year's Texas team isn't as good as last year's Texas team. The offensive line is nowhere as good as what it has been the past 2 years. Texas has had arguably the best offensive line in college football for the past 2 seasons. This year, the offensive line is a far cry from what it's been under Steve Sarkisian. Now, Arch Manning doesn't do the offensive line any justice when he holds on to the ball extremely long. He also has really bad pocket awareness. His pocket awareness is even worse than what Quinn Ewers' pocket awareness was. He'll just run into guys. He'll run into his offensive linemen. Arch Manning just doesn't look comfortable behind the pocket. He just doesn't look comfortable when he has to step up and he has to make tough throws with pressure in his face. He also has really bad misses. Arch Manning has Anthony Richardson level accuracy, and I'm not saying this to be funny. I'm not saying that as hyperbole. Like, Arch Manning's accuracy is Anthony Richardson level bad. When he misses the guy by at least 12 yards. When he overthrows a guy, the ball is sailing like 20 feet in the air. He just doesn't look comfortable back there. And Steve Sarkisian can't get the ground game going. And when you put Arch Manning in a situation when he has to live up to the hype, when he has to live up to the name on the back of his jersey, he crumbles. Now, Arch Manning is still a very young player, and he still has a lot of room to grow and develop. And the Arch Manning that we have seen up to this point probably won't be the finished product that we see at the end of this season. But will the finished product be good enough to get Texas into the college football playoffs? Because right now, Arch Manning has Texas on the path of finishing 7-5, 8-4. Arch Manning, for somebody that has the Manning last name, he doesn't look like he's a Manning. He looks like he's a running back. If anything, Texas is better off just running the triple option with Arch Manning because you got a better opportunity scoring with him running the ball than you do with him throwing the football. And average quarterback play is an easy way to have a disappointing season. With how loaded the SEC is with quality teams and quality coaches, you're going to have a hard time surviving with the quarterback play that you've received so far out of Arch Manning. And Arch Manning can't be benched. If Steve Sarkisian benches Arch Manning, his reputation takes a major hit. The Manning family wanted Arch Manning to go to Texas because they believed that Steve Sarkisian was the best coach who could prepare Arch Manning for the next level and to prepare him to have success in the NFL. He was the guy who could get the most out of this dude. And if you end up benching him, then the man and family turns on you. And think about how recruits are going to look at you. And with NIL now having somewhat of a cap around it and teams are going to be regulated to spending around 20 to 25 million, now you're just not going to be able to just outbid every team for the top ranked quarterback. You're actually going to have to show that quarterback that going to Texas gives them the best chance to get developed. And if you can't develop Arch Manning, then no other recruit is going to trust Steve Sarkisian anymore to be able to properly develop them. So Steve Sarkisian's reputation would take a really big hit, and it'll have some damage that will be hard for him to fix. And then also think about this. Arch Manning is only going to get better with more reps. Eventually, he's going to get in rhythm, and he's going to find himself. And I still think that with Arch Manning being so early into his tenure as Texas starter, he still is trying to figure himself out as a player. And Arch Manning with Steve Sarkisian, they have to understand how to get the best out of one another. I don't think that Steve Sarkisian is calling plays to put Arch Manning in the greatest of situations. I feel like he could do a lot more to ease Arch Manning into these games, try to get him into rhythm early, because Arch Manning never starts out any game 6 of 6, 8 of 8. He always starts the game out really streaky. And when you have a streaky player, you have to get him settled down early. You have to get him confident. You have to get him in rhythm. You have to get his footwork, his shoulders aligned with where the ball's going. And when you watch Arch Manning throw the football, his mechanics are all over the place. His foot can be one way and he could be throwing the ball the other way. He's just all out of whack. This is a young quarterback that's dealing with the burden of unrealistic expectations, and he's trying to be something that he's not. And Steve Sarkisian essentially has to strip this Texas offense down and rebuild it to an elementary level around Arch Manning so he can finally get confidence. Because obviously, Steve Sarkisian has put way too much on Arch Manning, and the rest of Texas hasn't been able to help elevate him. And it's incredibly hard to elevate a quarterback that's giving you average QB play with how tough of a schedule that Texas has to play. And I'm not trying to use this as a cop-out for Texas, but what I'm saying is that if you have average quarterback play, you're going to have difficulty beating a down Florida team on the road. You're going to have difficulty being able to take down Oklahoma, even though they are going to be without John Mateer. Having average quarterback play puts you in a lot of close games that you probably wouldn't be in if your quarterback play was a tad bit better. If Arch Manning gets benched, essentially, that would be Steve Sarkisian waving a white flag on the season. And the main reason for why Texas had all this hope and optimism that they finally could win a national championship again was mainly due to having the golden boy Arch Manning behind center. And if you bench him, then all that hope and optimism that you built up during this offseason heading into this season all but goes away. And even if Arch Manning still continues to struggle, at least Texas fans have a little bit of hope that he can eventually right the ship. Some people may argue that the backup quarterback that came in when Arch Manning got his helmet knocked off should have just stayed in for the entirety of that final drive, and maybe Texas would have came back in that situation. But this is all about Arch Manning. And if Steve Sarkisian can't develop him, then it's going to be very detrimental to his reputation as a really good offensive-minded coach and a really good developer of quarterbacks. If the Manning family entrusts you to develop their chosen prodigy and you fail, imagine how that's going to make you look in the eyes of the rest of the football world. You're going to kind of be viewed as the black sheep, and nobody else is going to trust you with a quarterback like Arch Manning ever again.